They say a good lawyer can get you out of anything. But what if the lawyer himself is the one you need to be protected from? Matthew Cole was not just any defense attorney. In the world of high-stakes criminal law, he was a legend. The man had a reputation for turning hopeless cases into clean acquittals. His calm demeanor, sharp suits, and a voice that could convince the devil he was innocent. It was no wonder clients lined up to pay him whatever he asked. He wasn't just good. He was perfect. Too perfect. It all started on a cold Thursday night in Manhattan. A 911 call reported a gunshot at the penthouse suite of Daniel Cross, a billionaire tech investor with more enemies than friends. By the time the police arrived, Daniel was already dead, one clean shot to the head, fired at close range. The place didn't look ransacked. No signs of forced entry. No fingerprints, no struggle, nothing. Just the body and a gold smartwatch on his wrist that had stopped recording his heartbeat at exactly 1:58 a.m. Security footage from the building's front entrance revealed something else. A man named Eric Lane, a former business partner of Daniel's, and not on good terms, had entered the building at 1:30 a.m. and left just after 2 o'clock. He didn't speak to the doorman. He didn't look at the camera. He just came and went, and Daniel ended up dead in between. When Eric was arrested, the media exploded. Open and shut, they called it. Motive? Money. The two had been in a brutal legal battle over patent ownership worth millions. Means? Eric had military training. Opportunity? That security footage said it all. His prints weren't on the scene, but his presence alone made the story too compelling. The police didn't even dig further. They didn't have to. But Eric didn't panic. He made one phone call, to Matthew Cole. The first meeting between Eric and Matthew didn't happen in a law office. It happened in a holding cell. Eric, wearing the orange jumpsuit and looking like a man drowning in bad luck, leaned forward and said, "I didn't do it." Matthew didn't blink. "Doesn't matter what you did," he said quietly, "only what I can prove you didn't." Matthew took the case. And just like that, the trial of the year began. In court, Matthew was surgical. He picked apart the prosecution's timeline. He questioned the accuracy of the smartwatch, bringing in an expert to say that digital heart monitors can be manipulated, hacked, or even stopped due to technical failure. He dissected the surveillance footage frame by frame. According to another expert he brought in, the timestamp could have been off by minutes if the server wasn't synced to a reliable atomic clock. Those few minutes could be the difference between life and death. He also brought character witnesses, people who vouched for Eric's honesty, his history, his clean record. He created doubt and he let it linger. He didn't claim Eric was a saint. He just painted him as a man in the wrong place at the wrong time. Coincidence isn't guilt, he told the jury. And suspicion is not proof. Day after day, Matthew planted seeds of uncertainty. The prosecution couldn't produce the murder weapon. They couldn't find fingerprints. And they couldn't definitively say that Daniel was alive when Eric entered that building. Everything was circumstantial. Everything relied on a timeline that Matthew methodically took apart. By the time he gave his closing argument, the jury didn't know what to believe anymore. "I'm not asking you to like Eric," he said, pacing slowly across the courtroom. "I'm not even asking you to trust him. I'm asking you to honor the law. If there is any doubt, and there is a lot of it, you cannot convict this man. Justice demands better than guesses and gut feelings." It worked. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict, not guilty. Eric collapsed in relief. The courtroom buzzed. Reporters rushed outside to deliver the breaking news. Once again, Matthew Cole had done the impossible. He walked out of the courthouse that day with his usual calm smile, shook a few hands, answered a few soft questions, and got into a black car that disappeared into the traffic. But the real ending happened later that night. Matthew returned to his sleek, minimalist apartment overlooking the city. He poured himself a drink, loosened his tie, and walked into a private room, a room no one but him ever entered. Behind a bookshelf, he opened a hidden compartment built into the wall. Inside was a small, velvet-lined case. He opened it gently. Inside, perfectly cleaned and oiled, was a small handgun, the very one that had killed Daniel Cross. Next to it, lying neatly folded, was a pair of black gloves. and resting on top of them, Daniel's gold smartwatch. Matthew picked it up, ran his finger across the cracked screen, and smiled faintly. Not the kind of smile you give when you win. The kind you give when no one knows you were ever playing. He spoke softly to the empty room. Never defend a killer, unless it's yourself. He slid the case shut, locked the compartment, and turned off the light. To the world, he had just saved an innocent man. But in reality, he had just pulled off the perfect crime. 2 weeks had passed since the verdict, and the city had moved on. The headlines had shifted to newer scandals, and the name Eric Lane was slowly fading from public memory. But inside the homicide division of NYPD, one man hadn't moved on. Detective Ryan Keller had sat through every day of that trial, not as a witness or part of the investigation, but as an observer. Officially, the case was closed. But for Ryan, something never sat right. Keller wasn't flashy like the lawyers or tech experts who had testified in court. He was old school, paper files, coffee stains, and a gut that had never let him down. And his gut was telling him that Eric Lane was innocent, sure, but someone else in that courtroom had been far too invested in making sure the truth stayed buried. He started small. Background checks, timelines, financial records. Nothing illegal. Just patterns. And Matthew Cole had a pattern. A strange one. 5 years back, another murder trial, very similar. No evidence, high-profile client, messy motive, no conviction. Then another, 3 years ago. Same story. And both clients had vanished from the public eye after their release. It wasn't a red flag, exactly. But it felt designed. Keller got a court order and dug into Matthew's recent financial transactions. On the surface, everything was clean. Tax filings, invoices, legal retainers. But buried in the payments was something odd, a large, unitemized wire transfer from a now-dissolved shell company based in Zurich. It had arrived in his account just 1 week after Daniel Cross's death. Meanwhile, Matthew continued with his usual routine: court appearances, charity galas, legal lectures. The man was a ghost in a tailored suit, never leaving a footprint. But Keller didn't need footprints. He needed a mistake. Then came the break. A junior tech analyst working with Keller's task force ran a scan on the digital logs from Daniel Cross's smartwatch, the one Matthew had so famously discredited in court. She didn't accept that it could just glitch out without warning. And it hadn't. The watch had stopped recording his heartbeat at 1:58 a.m., yes, but it had reconnected to a Bluetooth device at 1:55 a.m. Just before Daniel was killed. They tracked the signal. It had a unique MAC address. Masked, yes, but not perfectly. It had connected before. Once, at a legal conference in Boston. Another time, near a courthouse in Brooklyn. And both times, Matthew Cole had been in attendance. The device? Likely a burner phone. And whoever had it was within 30 feet of Daniel when he died. Keller didn't confront him. Not yet. He wanted more. He pulled Eric Lane in for a quiet, off-the-record chat. No cameras, no lawyers. Just questions. Eric looked exhausted, like a man who'd survived a flood but was still coughing up water. "I didn't kill him," he said again. "I know," Keller replied calmly. "But I think I met the man who did." At first, Eric didn't believe it. "Matthew? That's crazy. He saved my life." "Exactly," Keller said, leaning forward. "He saved it, because he was the one who put it at risk in the first place." Eric looked stunned. His eyes flicked back and forth, replaying every interaction he'd had with Matthew. How quickly Matthew had taken the case. How confident he'd been. How he'd never asked Eric where he really was that night. Just told him what to say and when to say it. "I thought he believed me," Eric muttered. "I thought he saw something in me worth defending." Keller gave him a long look. He did. He saw someone innocent. With Eric's cooperation, they set the bait. A sting operation. Fake evidence. An anonymous tip. A hidden camera planted inside a dummy office. The setup was clean. A fabricated story about a new witness with surveillance footage from a nearby construction site. Footage that hadn't been submitted during the trial. A USB drive left for Matthew, slipped anonymously into his firm's secure mail slot. They watched as he received it. He didn't hesitate. Within hours, he was in that office, alone, playing the video. There was nothing on it. Just static. Then a message popped on screen. This isn't your story to write anymore. Matthew didn't panic. He didn't flinch. He simply stood, adjusted his tie, and walked out. But that was enough. Because in that office, they'd dusted the fake USB drive. And Matthew's fingerprints were all over it, even though in court, he had claimed he hadn't handled any new evidence related to the case since the trial ended. It wasn't the smoking gun. But it was smoke. Enough for a warrant. The search of Matthew's private apartment turned up nothing, until they broke through the wall behind the bookshelf. And there it was. The handgun. The gloves. The smartwatch. He hadn't destroyed the evidence. He'd kept it. Trophies maybe. Or reminders. Either way, it was all there. When they arrested him, Matthew said nothing. Not a single word. He didn't ask for a lawyer. He didn't ask for a phone call. He just smiled, that same calm smile he always wore in court, and waited. At his own arraignment, he chose to represent himself. I have full confidence, he said to the judge, that I'll walk out of this courtroom just as I have every other. But this time, the system wasn't on his side. The evidence was solid. The story airtight. And the jury? They'd already heard how good he was at lies. It took them less than 4 hours to convict. In the end, Matthew Cole didn't go down because he made a mistake in the murder. He went down because he believed he was too smart to ever get caught. But even masterminds forget. The perfect alibi only works until someone starts looking for the perfect liar.